This is Eating Crow with Pete Durand.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Eating Crow podcast. I'm joined by Casey Jacox. Casey, it is great to have you on the show today.
I'm honored and humbled and excited to eat some crow with you today.
By the way, I need to take my hat off for just a second because we're almost twins.
I love it.
Bald guys unite. Well, Casey, it was recommended that I speak with you, and I'm so happy that we did make the connection. I think there's a lot of ways I align with every part of your journey, and then certainly the things you're doing right now, both as a husband and a father and a business person. And I'm curious because you're really diving into this part of your life in a lot of ways. At a time where most people are still trying to figure it out, you're leaning pretty far in. So I'm going to start with something I thought was very interesting in your background. You spent almost 15 years in kind of what I'll call a individual sales account role. And then boom, all of a sudden you moved up to leadership like really rapidly towards the end. Was there a change in that role? What changed that led you to go into leadership and management? And then what did you learn when you got there that maybe you didn't know before then?
Yeah, good question. I would say kind of lucky a little bit, and you get the right teammates, right people around you, right account,
Sure.
All that kind of helps you. And so one of the things that drove me when I was at K4 one of our executives would say, he would talk about every year you get a little bit better, but you're more humble. How can we create mini Caseys? And I was like, what are you talking about? But in the job I had, I couldn't do that because I was an individual contributor.
Sure.
I knew by going into leadership, I didn't want to take a huge pay cut. And so I worked with our leadership team to kind of figure out what would be a role where I could, still impact people, not take a massive pay cut, where we can both win. We did that. And then then we kind of moved into this like more model of verticalizing our account strategy. And so then I became more like an executive sponsor over a certain couple of accounts.
Got it.
We went into more like changing the way we did business from like just staff aug to staff aug and services. So that was more of a thing. I think what I learned the most was the impact of knowing a customer really well and why that can help support a sales team. I think the thing that surprised me is like how much behind the scenes sometimes difficulties would go on from an operations or leadership perspective that you just, as a seller, you just assume miraculously happen. Bills get paid on time,
That's eye-opening for a couple of reasons. Being in the career space, I'm always fascinated when I talk to a highly paid, highly successful individual contributor who feels like their next move is director or VP of sales. And my first two questions are, number one, are you ready to make a lot less money? And two, are you ready to give up your calendar and work for someone else and literally be at the beck and call of all the people that you now manage and all their problems? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's kind of what it is. So you seem to have figured that out early, which I love the fact that you said, how do we do this so I'm rewarded by taking this step up, not penalized from a compensation standpoint? And I love the second part of your comment, which there were some things there you hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, for me, I think, I don't know if it's playing quarterback. There's an Uncle Rico moment right there. Playing Dynamite. I got to mention that. But I think that the gap between, this was the hardest part about being like driving humility from where I was at. The gap between me and number two was quite large.
Yeah.
And if I was giving the same speech year over year, I don't think we were winning as a company. And so that was part of my driving force. I said, I want to be in a spot where it's not about me anymore. I want to make sure like the 22-year-old person, let's make he or she the star. Let's make someone else the star. Let me share where I sucked and struggled. And if that's truly what you want, mini Casey, let's figure out a way to do it, because I think that'd be fun because that's a way I can make a greater impact to the company. And that's what made me most excited about going into that role.
This is not a pivot. I want to stay in this lane for a minute, but you wrote a book called Win the Relationship, Not the Deal. Is that a key point of the gap you identified between you and the number two person on the team?
No, I figured when that kind of mantra hit me, it was like, you ever seen Christmas Vacation?
Oh yeah.
When Grizz sees his tree in the forest and it like glows.
Yeah.
When I was training a team in Dallas and I said, you guys, how do we win people? How do you win a client when you lose a deal? Think about that. Mm-hmm. I got blank stares. I said, we have to win relationships, not deals. When I said that, I was like, that's it. That's the name of the book.
Got it.
I think for me, it was about, I think the sports background, just that constantly of you have a good game, you still watch film.
Yep.
You have a bad game, you watch film. You get coached in front of your buddies. Hey, take Case, it's cover two. Why are we making that throw? Hey, You didn't see blitz coming. Why didn't you check out of this play? Why didn't you change the play line? Like that ability to be coached allowed me to take that same mantra into business. So it's like, for me, it was all about, I'm never going to win every deal, but I can try to win every person. And if I win every person, it's going to increase the chance to win more deals.
Wow. I have never heard anybody weave two incredibly good analogies into one story like that. First of all, I love the deep movie references already. We got Christmas Vacation and Napoleon Dynamite into the podcast early. But by the way, I used an Uncle Rico GIF yesterday on LinkedIn.
Seriously?
Absolutely
Nice.
did. Loved it. So let's talk about the first thing, which is what inspired the title of the book. Then I want to come back to being coached in front of your peers, because there's so much there. But it's funny you mentioned that. I have two clients that I did not win 2 years ago, but built a really good relationship with and stayed in touch with them and went through some times with them where they were facing some big challenges, both personally, professionally, and just stayed right in their lane with them and just built a really good rapport. And here you are 2 years later, they will be two of my biggest customers next year.
Wow.
And their opening comment was, I wanted to do this for you. I wanted to get this to you because you're the kind of person who I want to have a relationship, whether we're doing business or not. And I love the fact that you had an aha moment, a light bulb that said, there's a book. So when you walked out of that meeting and that training session, did you have the chapters in your head already figured out? Or what was the next step?
Yeah, I knew I did not want to write it when I was still in corporate because I didn't think that was fair to my company. Or one, I didn't want to be distracted, but two, I didn't want to use it. To me, it could have been used as an excuse. I'll write tomorrow because I'm busy.
Sure.
And so when I was like kind of, I'd say maybe worked myself out of a job on accident, or when the time was just like, it was a great run. I left on great terms. I wish K-Force all the best. And really just was, the time was time.
20 years. Yeah. That's a long time.
20 years. It's hard to believe that was almost 5 years ago. But when I knew I wanted to write the book, I literally, from one of my former clients, shout out to Bobby Robinson, AT&T. She's still there. She was like a content writing manager, and she was used to, I remember telling her I want to write a book, and she said, just write every day. I'm like, I don't know what to write about. She goes, just write every day. And so from when I left, I took a few weeks to get my mind right. And then from 9 to 11:30 for every day, I wrote.
Yeah.
And that kind of helped the habit. But to get to the chapters part, what you said, I went through what's called just a word map exercise. Got a blank piece of paper out, and I just started writing down words. So when I think about how do I win people, how do I do it? Be nice, set expectations, listen, be humble, be vulnerable. I just wrote down all these words, and then I put like clouds, like almost a wire map around, like circles or clouds, and I would draw lines to different words. And then those words like start forming themes. And those themes, I'm like, oh, that's chapter 1 and that's chapter 2. And I didn't really kind of know which order they're going to go in. And that's really how I did it. And so once I had the mindset of, oh, here are the core themes I want to write about, then I just started getting stories come to me.
I think the hardest part of, by the way, you're in sales, hardest part is creating that first sales deck, right? If you're a startup or a new company, or you're new to an organization and you look at the existing materials, like I got to come up with my own story, my own pitch, whatever it is. That's the hardest part, is kind of getting a theme or an outline on paper. And I think that's a great way to help people try to think of a visual way to start that can turn into some connections and then turn into stories. That's excellent.
I think one thing I'd say, Pete, is I heard this piece of advice and I love sharing it with others, because everyone's good piece of advice. You get it from someone else, and it's our job to recreate it, make it our own, share it. But this person said, don't let the start stop you.
Yeah, right.
And that just really hit me, because so many times it spoke to me, because I teach like this. I created 5 new swear words, and people think swear, but they think like good F-bomb or an MF. Yeah. But my swear words are need to, should to, want to, have to, and can't, which create anxiety and create no plan. Instead, I just use I will. And when I work with people, I'm like probably really annoying to them. I'm like, stop swearing. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, don't tell me what you need to do. It's waste time. Don't tell me what you should do. It's waste time. Be uncommon.
Love it.
And so like that mantra, I don't know, that really kind of helped me.
My driver's license expires in 3 months. So I needed to get my driver's license renewed, but I've been on the road so much that I only have 1 day to get there a week. And then I'm on the road, and there's no online appointments available for 4 months.
Oh,
like you, I subscribe to the same mindset, by the way. I didn't push this out. I literally got up this morning at 6 and drove to the closest DMV and was the second person in line and waited an hour to get in the building, and then 2.5 hours later to get it. But I'm done now. Right. And I know people would have procrastinated that all the way to the end because it's the last thing you want to do. But when I have something like that in front of me, I just kind of just do it. Let's pivot to the second analogy you would just describe, which I think is so powerful. I want to connect this to parenting as well here in a minute. But you mentioned being coached in front of your peers. Why didn't you check down on that? It was cover two, all those different things you mentioned. That I don't think people that have not played a competitive sport particularly at a D1 level, right? You don't necessarily do that as much in high school. I think in football, you watch a lot of film. You don't do that in a lot of other sports, but sitting there in front of all of your teammates and for 10 minutes straight, listening to the head coach call out everything you did wrong, not only in one play, but perhaps multiple plays.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a valuable lesson that a lot of people don't get early in their lives. That's why I'm very partial to D1 athletes, particularly in a team sport environment, because they've had good coaches, bad coaches. They've been acknowledged poorly. And a lot of times, a lot of college coaches don't have a lot of training in how to develop young people, and they've never been coached in how to do that. So you just kind of take it. How have you been able to apply that not only in your sales career, but as a sales leader?
Mm-hmm.
How do you use those same techniques, but in a way that drives perhaps a little more team culture and performance?
In the spirit of checking the ego, I got to set the audience straight. I'm a D2 athlete, so you got me up there. So I wish I could say I was a D1 athlete.
By the way, I think in football, at all levels, there's a lot of film and a lot of D1, D2, D3. There's so much relying on your teammate doing the exact right thing at the exact right moment, probably more than a lot of other sports.
Yeah, and it's not only did I get coached on the good plays, we watch it once, maybe twice. The bad plays, it's rewinding 7, 8, 9 times, 10 times. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, coach, I suck. Okay, you've said it 43 times. I get it. So does everybody else. Can we move on? No,
I like the fact that you said even if you win, you still watch film. Right? Yeah.
So to your question, so like I would that same mindset of coaching, getting coached, like I like a mantra I always like to live by is it's okay not to know everything. It's just not okay not to do anything about it. That drives me. So even when I would lose a deal or win a deal, I'd say, hey, Mrs. Klein, thanks for the opportunity to help you. Tell me, is there anything else we could have done differently or better to show up differently? Or let's say we win. So glad you chose us. So glad you hired me as your whatever it may be. Tell me, are there two things? Tell me two reasons why you hired me, and tell me two things I could have done differently or better to make the experience that much better. Just constantly showing the person I'm working with this growth mindset, because that's A, it's uncommon, and B, it's going to drive a better experience.
Do you let them off the hook, Casey? If somebody says, I thought you did great, that's why you got the deal, do you let them off the hook, or do you really drill down to get those 4 points?
Keep going. Tell me why.
Yeah, by the way, that's important. I think a lot of people and I think a lot of people's reaction to those questions might be like, yeah, whatever. But if they find out you're serious, that's pretty unique. I probably have only been asked that question in less than 1% of the vendors that I have chosen. Less than 1% of the people who I have not chosen have ever asked me any questions like that.
So like I teach, so this framework I got taught called Give Two, Take Two, when I teach it, and then when I get done, I'll say, hey, let's say if I was speaking to a company, I'd say, hey, and so in the spirit of getting coached, I'm sure there's things I sucked at today. I'm sure there's things I messed up on. So I want you to work with your leader afterwards and tell him or her two things you liked about what I shared, and tell me 2 areas where you think I could have done a better job. No one's perfect, right?
Right.
But back to your coaching question, one of my favorite stories I love telling, that when I think about eating crow, this is how to eat crow. At the end of my corporate career, I was a part of a team of 5 or 6, and we're leading a big sales transformation. And we were working with this outside vendor to kind of shape the way we went to market, shape the way our message was, move up the value chain, be more like consultative in our approach. And now I knew the content really well. I've been working on it for a year. I knew it inside and out. I was like, I'm good. And so we're traveling around the United States. We're in Dallas one time doing like this final prep, like a train the trainer model. We had to prove to this vendor and our executive team we knew what we were talking about. We knew how to teach it. And so I had to get up in front of like my boss, some of my peers, probably 15 people, and present day one of the content. Now, did I practice? No, because I knew it. I didn't need to.
Sure.
Story I told myself. So I go and I present, and the gentleman his name's Ray, was our outside vendor. He goes, hey, Case, what'd you think? I go, what do you mean? He's like, how'd you think you did? I go, pretty good. Like, your body language is good. You were smiling at me, and I didn't really stumble over my words. I felt confident. He's like, yeah, good. What I've heard about you is you're elite. That was good. I'll pass you. But that wasn't elite. Sandy, you're up next in front of everybody.
Wow.
Now I had two choices. I could say, F you, bro. Why would you just I was the number one guy in this company. Who gives a, you know what? It doesn't matter. Why would you do that in front of me? But I was so mad at myself, Pete. So mad. because I gave him the perception that I was a quote unquote top person company, and I could just show up and wing it. I could just show up and be the best. And it made me so mad. And I had to sit in that moment of, you know what, for the rest of the day, knowing that, and it made me so mad. And so at the end of the day, so my buddy's like, hey, Jacox, you want to go grab a quick beer at the bar? I'm like, you know what? I'll be down in a sec, guys. Never made it down. From 6:30 until 10:30 in my room, I'm presenting day 2 of the content over and over and over again. I could not wait for the next day to come. The next day I wake up, get in the elevator. Our CMO's, dude, everything okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just ready to compete. I'm ready to make yesterday go away. I'm ready to show up differently today. Can't wait. I go in the room to get ready to present. This Ray guy goes, all right, Sandy, you're up first. I'm like, nope, I gotta go. I gotta go. Can I go first? Sure. He's like, all right, go. And I go. All the feedback he gave me why I wasn't elite the next day, I did it differently this day. All he said, he goes, Casey, that's what elite looks like. You're up, you're next. Sandy, you're next. And to me, it was like, those are the most powerful things that people inside companies who with experience, they don't realize how quickly complacency can set in. They don't realize how bad the ego is crushing your organization. It instills fear. And that's why I love this theme of this podcast is let's get people to talk about where you sucked and humble everybody.
So how long ago was this?
That was 2016.
Yeah. So you are late in your career. You've been crushing it. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I was an executive at our company.
So I have had a lot of people share eating crow moments, and some of them are often very deeply personal moments where they were doing things wrong in their life and made a correction. I haven't had anybody share anything work related that poignant. Because as you're telling me the story, I'm literally sitting there going, oh, I know exactly how I'd feel. Oh, that would be awful. That would be awful if that happened to me. And it's happened. There's no question. I've done thousands of presentations and pitches, and I pride myself in being able to go off the cuff. I had a public speaking class in grad school, and by this point, I was probably a little too arrogant about my public speaking skills. And the semester final was you would walk up in front of the audience in the auditorium, and they would give you one word, and you had to talk about it for 45 minutes to an hour. No problem. Wow. One word. The word they gave me was nothing. So I went up to the whiteboard and I wrote down the word nothing and said, I'm going to talk about nothing for 45 minutes, and I'll have you all at the edge of your seat as I'm doing it.
Wow.
So I just started telling stories about how when you'd say to somebody, what's going on? Nothing. And what that really meant. Right. And there was guys next to me that had been given words and they were really fumbling through it. And they were like trying to make up technical descriptions like they would in a sales pitch. And they were really pissed that I talked about nothing for 45 minutes. I said, you forgot the mission. The mission was all about delivery, eye contact, pause, the process of giving the speech, not the actual content. But if someone had roasted me like they did you in front of my whole crew, oh man, I give you a lot of credit. I don't know if I'd have gone back to my hotel room and practiced. I probably went down to the bar and just bitched. So good on you, man. That's great.
It was an ego moment. One of the best pieces of advice I got in my life is you can be right or you can get what you want. Rarely do you get both.
Yeah.
And I hate that advice, but I need it often, just like we all do.
Yeah.
It's a love-hate relationship. And I thought, what a great moment I have right there. And I knew that these people, I respect this guy more because he knew he could challenge. He probably knew deep down he could challenge me.
Heck of a leader right there. Yep. Yeah. That's, by the way, that was a game film moment right there. He game filmed you right there.
Oh, 100%.
So I would venture to say that had you not had the experiences you've had in the film room, that might have been more difficult for you to respond to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right.
That's fair.
Perhaps you're still wired that way, but I think having the forethought and the humility to understand that reaction and go, all right, time to go make myself better. So let's pivot for a minute. A lot of your current mission, and I love how you've tied your past, this quarterback dad podcast. And I work with a lot of guys that have made their life's passion improving fatherhood, which I think is so important. Obviously, it's a personal passion for mine. It's not a platform. I don't consider myself an expert. I love meeting people that have really doubled down here. So when you think about these experiences you've had, and I often tell people I've learned more as a father that I can translate into the business world and vice versa. But there are a couple of things that come back and forth. So when you prep your kids, and we were fear in the fact that your oldest son's going to be a college golfer, which, by the way, talk about a mental sport. You bogey a hole and you got to come back and hit the perfect drive again. That is mental toughness. So how did you translate your film room experience and your sales experience? How have you been able to leverage that as a father?
Yeah, that's a good question. I work hard and I slow down to remind myself that I have no eligibility left. And I work hard and often that my job is from a sports perspective, my wife helped me figure this. Can I get 18 seasons before they go to the pros, 18 years to get them ready. And I use curiosity to help change habits. And I love asking my kids, hey, tell me what's changed.
Sure.
What do you mean, Dad? Have your goals changed? No, well, why ask me? You told me that you want to do these things. I've not seen you put in that kind of work ethic, but maybe, and if your goals have changed, that's fine. But I know if I was wanting to do what you would do, here's what I'd be doing differently. You do what you want to do. So I'm not trying to manipulate them. I'm just trying to help them, remind them things that this is what you told me you wanted to do. If you don't want to do it, then I don't want to invest money in things that you're just going to waste your time and mine. Not worth it.
It is such an important discussion. My youngest son, who probably was the most physically talented and mentally even keeled of all my kids, my oldest son worked his butt off, very talented, but he worked every day to get to play D1 soccer. The youngest one, I think he kind of for a while did what enough to get it done. Mm-hmm. And it drove the older one nuts. Like he saw a lot of potential and he wanted to make this top team when he was like 10 years old, and the roster came out online looking at, he's standing next to me and he didn't make the top team. And I could see kind of the tears laid up and Mom's sitting there and he looks at me and I said, what do you think about that, son? He said, I'm very disappointed. I said, what do you think I'm going to say to you? He said, I know what you're going to say to me. Work harder. That was it. I said, some other kid played a little less computer games, watched a little less TV, and put the time in. And by the way, you don't need to do that for me. I love you just as you are. Mm-hmm. And I think you're an absolutely wonderful kid. And if your goal isn't to be on the top team, I'm totally aligned with it. If you want to play 4 sports and not pick one and be great at it, I think that's great. But if you told me I want to be in the top team, then you've got to figure out a way to work hard to get to that goal. It doesn't mean you're going to make it, but if I see the effort there, then I can look at you and go, I believe you did your best. And that just wasn't a fit. But I can look at you honestly right now and say, I don't know if you did your best. So I love how you phrased the question, which is, I'm curious, have your goals changed? I wish I would have thought of that at the time, because that's a better question than maybe I approached it. So that's a really wonderful lesson for your kids.
I think one thing I also work on is I have high expectations of myself. And sometimes I have to really check my ego and make sure I don't have those same high expectations of my kids, which is hard to do sometimes as a competitor. And like what you just said about whatever team you're, you still love them. Like I tell my son, whether you shoot 71 or 98, 2 things: the sun's coming up tomorrow and I still love you. And we all are going to eventually get cut. The sports are going to end. What's more important for me, guys, is that the life skills you're learning about, like exercise, eating well, taking care of your body, those things, when you get into work, you're going to be like exercise. Now, I don't work out like I used to work out. Like, sure. I'm not like a beast like you, but like my fitness goals are don't get fat and don't get hurt. I don't want to like.
Those are, by the way, both those goals require some effort.
But they see us exercising all the time. Now, it might be sweating the oldies with Richard Simmons. It's still moving.
By the way, right? Don't discount the value of Richard Simmons.
You college roommate of yours?
No. Boy, that just dated me. But I'm sure all the younger people on this podcast just went, who? And they're going to look at it and go, I can't even imagine. I can't. Oh, yeah, Tybo. Yeah, Tybo. I think that we should pause here and just think about what you said that's really important, is projecting your goals onto your kids I think that translates in the working world as well. I know, having started a company, a couple of them, that as an entrepreneur, I built a fitness company, right? And that's my thing. I'm passionate about it, whatever it might be. I realized as the founder, I am without a doubt the most passionate person about this organization in the room. A lot of the people there are for a job. They want to enjoy their job, but they don't care about it as much as I do. I've always told my kids, I will never criticize you for the outcome, ever. But if you come off the field and you're disappointed with your play, and I don't believe you played as hard as you could have, particularly in a team sport where other people rely on you. Individual sport, I think golf is a harder thing to even coach, because they could put all the work in and just have an off day. So that's not an effort thing. But still, you would know they put the work in, right? I guess so that does tie. But they're doing so much work off the field to prep for golf, that's 4 hours. It's just such a crazy mental game. But I know a lot of parents, the soccer mom, the soccer dad, the basketball parent, who maybe didn't quite make it where they wanted to in high school, and they sure hope their kids do, and you can hear it on the sideline.
Oh yeah. To me, what's most important for me is body language.
Yeah.
That is my non-negotiable.
Yep.
You're right. Golf is hard, and Rory McIlroy, it's hard. There's pros that shoot 80, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like it's not like you woke up and did something wrong to somebody. Golf just loves to humble us.
It sure does.
Basketball shooters are going to shoot. Caitlin Clark last weekend went 2 for 13 the first half, ended up having 30 points in the second half. Shooters are going to shoot, but how you respond when you miss shots, when you respond when you freaking Adam Hadwin on the PGA Tour yesterday. We're recording in March. When this episode, I'm not sure when this episode comes out. He freaking hooked one left and threw his club in the lake.
Yeah.
Not okay.
No.
If I was his dad, I'd his ass be off the course.
Yeah, it's very true. Grayson Allen, who plays now for Phoenix, I was fortunate. One of my best friend's daughters is married to Grayson, so we were at their wedding. And when he was with the Bucks, had a decent run there, right? And by the way, great organization. Just for some reason, wasn't the right fit, wasn't lining up. And look at him in Phoenix; he has set several franchise records for shooting threes. I think he had shot 8 threes in a quarter. By the way, one of the most fierce competitors, steps on the court, different person, steps off the court, the most quiet, humble, literally one of the most quiet human beings you meet. He gets on the basketball court and a switch flips. So what is it about that new environment or culture, whatever, that has allowed him to just get in this flow? Who knows? But maybe he's in the right lineup and somebody said to him, I've got confidence in you and you're going to do this and you're going to be on the court whether you make it or not. Let him to play a little more free.
It's funny when you say that. You reminded me of a kind of a silly dad joke, but it was advice that I told my daughter. I used to tell my son this, but mainly my daughter, because she still plays basketball. I said, honey, we've never had a pit bull. No offense to people who have pit bulls, but I don't want a pit bull.
No way.
They seem a little scary. I said, I want you to pretend that you're a pit bull. And then I want you to pretend, this is as we get ready to go to the game. Then I want you to pretend that you've not eaten in 3 months. Okay, now visualize that. That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now right before I get you out of the car, I'm taking your leash off. Now go play a game. Oh, yeah. And then when the game's over, I'm going to put the leash back on. And there are people that know my daughter. One of my buddies calls her, it's time to release the bulldog. Like she plays controlled recklessness. And it's who she is, but I think you can kind of infuse those things. Now, but if your kid doesn't want to do those things, don't force it, parents.
Boy, you've hit on a really important point. So you've got 2 kids. I have 3, right? My daughter's the oldest. She's 6 feet tall. She was the female athlete of the year when she graduated high school at a very competitive school, but she played volleyball, basketball, soccer, and then coached swimming in the summer. So she was a very good athlete at all 4 sports.
Wow.
Didn't want to play D1. She said, I'm not going to make a living doing this. I want to go experience college. I want to get a nursing degree and do things differently. And I call her my stone cold killer. She just has this very even disposition all the time. The 2 best games she played in her entire sports career, one was in a youth soccer game and the other one was in basketball. And both times some girl popped her in the mouth. And then the pit bull, the leash went off. And I looked at her and I'm like, if you could do that every game, you'd be a freak show. But guess what? I prefer your natural disposition to be able to go through life and handle things until it really gets to a point where it breaks. That will serve you. My oldest son, again, one of the most compassionate people in the world, but when he's on the field, if he has to step on your throat to win the game, he's going to do that, right? And he's going to light his teammates up. He was a goalie in college, and his job was to hold the guys in front of him accountable at every point. My youngest son, if he dropped a guy in a tough tackle, he pats him on the butt, picks him up, and helps him up on the field. My son's like, what are you doing? You don't help him up. You look at him and move on. And the fact that all 3 are wired differently, you're right. I can't coach into them what I want them. I want them to be who they are and then naturally find a ways to leverage that particular skill or asset in the best way.
I like also talking. That's really good. I like sharing with my kids. I said, the one thing that you'll have forever is memories. No one will ever take those from you.
Yeah.
The one thing just from someone who's life experience kids is, or don't have regrets.
Yeah.
You'll never regret working out. You'll never regret running an extra. You'll never regret diving for a loose ball. You'll regret, man, wish I would have done that. Think about that moment. And if you're 34 and you're like, man, I wish I would have.
Oh yeah.
Like, how's that going to feel?
You made a good point. I think that's actually the same message I've had. When you walk off the field, you may not have won the game or scored the game, but if you've left it all out there, there's no regrets. It's when you know, man, I probably could have pressed that a little harder or made that run, or the body language thing for me is always an issue too. If I made a bad play and I hung my shoulders and hung my chin, I don't go for that either, right?
Mm-mm.
And it's, by the way, we all have good days at work, bad days at work. We get that film room coaching moment where we know we just didn't bring our best. It's really how you react to it and how you respond. Respond is a better word. It's how you respond to it, I think, is important.
And it's hard. I do mindset work coaching for people. Pardon my French, I lose my shit at times.
Mm-hmm.
Last night, perfect example. Yesterday was a great day, doing great. All of a sudden, I had to replace my tires, brakes, pads, and calipers. But the people I use, I'm not going to throw them on blast. They said, your calipers are fine. Within a week, my car smells like it's going to blow up, like it's burning. I'm like, what is that? And I'm not like, I'm the least handiest man in United States history. Like if you Google that, my image comes up. And so now I'm like, and I take it back and they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. I'm like, no, it's not. Like my car is, something's burning. I can smell it. 2 days later, take it back in. There it is. He's, oh yeah, your calipers, we got to take those out. How much are those? It's $1,000. I'm like, dude. So now that got me on it. That has me on edge. But my son, when he came home from school, I said, bro, before you go to the golf course, I love you want to go compete. Put all your laundry away, fold laundry, and put the clouds from the towels from the washer and dryer. Are we clear? Got you, Dad. Yep. All right. So now I'm kind of just, now the car got me on edge because I was frustrated. And then I go upstairs. Laundry's folded, towels are wet, laundry's not put away. And now now I just feel like smoke going on. But I'm like choosing, okay, but I can choose to overreact. And some of my buddies are like, welcome to teenage boys. One out of three is that he's batting 300, make it Hall of Fame. But I told my wife, I said, honey, I need your help. I said, please take a picture. I want this to come from you, not me, so that he kind of can work through it. He goes, screenshots, take the picture. And Ryder's like, uh-oh. He's like, so Dad, he was actually pretty funny. He goes, I had to go number 2 and I got distracted.
I'm glad that's memorialized in this podcast, by the way. That's awesome. Yeah.
But to the point, but I had to quickly get myself right back on track. And that's where I think we as humans, we get going these ways of, I don't let a bad hour impact a bad day to a bad week.
Yeah. And I think that is where intentional parenting becomes such an art form, because you have to let them know they crossed the line, but you also have to understand the magnitude and the gravity of that situation in the bigger scheme of life. So similar situation, all my kids are wired differently. My daughter, if I'd asked her to do that, she would have wrote it down, would have been on a checklist. It would have been done the next day. My oldest son wouldn't neglect it out of laziness. He just might find something else more importantly to do, right? And it's his priority. He just might stack it differently in his priority list. My youngest son, flat out sometimes youngest kid, just so laissez-faire sometimes. So prime example, this happened literally a few weeks ago. I get the renewal for his truck license plate registration. So I text him and say, go get your license plate or go get your truck inspected. It's 20 years old. It's a beater. We just want to get it through college so I can send the renewal in and pay the fee. Sure, Dad, got you. He said, I'll have it done Friday. So I wait till Monday, send the check in. 3 weeks later, I get the check back. Your truck has not been inspected. Therefore, we cannot renew the plates.
Oh boy.
So I sent it in again after I told him, and I got it back a second time. That time I'm lit. And I texted him the paper and I said, imagine me sitting in front of you right now. You're in your apartment at college. Imagine me sitting there with you. What kind of conversation would we be having right now, Sam? And how would I claw this back out of your pocket? So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay for your inspection and you're going to pay for the renewal, and this conversation's over. He texted my wife and he goes, oh. He goes, I literally was going to, and same thing. I had a final or something and missed it. I said, I don't care what the issue is. It should have been in your calendar, blocked, and you should have done it. I didn't lose it, but I certainly wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
we do those things. There's such good teaching moment, whether it's that or body language. And I like to, hey, unacceptable. But why am I doing this? You think it's because I want to be an a-hole? Does I want to be annoying? No, it's because this is what these skills I'm teaching you now. You'll thank me 10 years later. You might think I'm the biggest tool right now.
Yeah.
I don't care. but you'll thank me later.
It's interesting. I saw someone post the other day on LinkedIn, and they talked about how not only the trades, but manual labor has lost its luster. And I put a comment in there, which actually generated quite a bit of response. And I said, I would venture to say that most young people coming out of college today haven't done 20 minutes of manual labor in their life. They've never dug a hole. They've never cut a 2x4. They've never raked a yard. They've never cut the grass. They've never changed oil. They've never washed a car. They've never had to unplug a toilet. They've never done any of the things that we grew up learning how to do. And a woman made a comment in the post, which was interesting. She said, you can't blame them. You have to blame their parents. To which I said, I said, I think you're right. There's this generational gap that has happened where the concept of manual labor has no longer, we don't teach it in our homes. We want to make our kids' lives convenient. Like literally changing the oil in their car is something most kids have never done. Now, a lot of new cars are complicated, but it still could be done. And this is where when I see someone like you who's got quarterback dad, all the lessons we just talked about, humility, hard work, but also learning life skills, which you said, you might laugh at me now, but someday when you're with your wife and she's pregnant and you get a flat tire in the middle of the road, you're going to be very grateful you know how to change a tire. Because if you can't, she's going to look at you a little funny, right? And your job is to provide and protect. And if you can't do that in the very big, why can't you hang a ceiling fan on your own or fix a light switch or literally or do a basic home improvement project? How do you know how to paint a room and tape off a window? They don't even know how to do that. So I think there's so many things that as parents, we forget about the intentionality and the time it takes to be thoughtful in what you bring to your children's plate and how you say, this is just something we're going to do together.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of the reason that is society.
Oh yeah.
And how out of control our youth sports programs are.
Very much.
We don't give us, there's no time to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I played a ton of sports. My dad was kind of handy and not super handy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn a lot from him around that. So like hence I've not become handy. I always say a second hand. I can help buddies do projects,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
I don't have the mindset to see it. That's not how I was. Now, unfortunately, I'm not helping out my daughter's crazy handy, which is crazy. She gets that from my wife because my father-in-law, my wife's dad's like MacGyver. He can fix anything.
That's awesome.
But it's a choice. Do we, as parents, do you buy into, I got to go to this training in this camp and this, or if they don't do that, they're going to fall behind, or are they?
Right.
Like my wife's good about balanced speech because if the kids are good enough, they're going to be found.
I literally had this conversation with someone last weekend at a young kid's birthday party. One of my nieces, her kid had a birthday party. I was talking to the dad, and this kid's 4, and he's in sports 4 nights a week, martial arts, soccer, baseball, basketball. I said, stop. He's like, what do you mean? I said, take him out. He's too little. There's no reason. He should be running around the backyard, building forts, doing whatever. I said, at some point, that's going to be okay. And then you got to kind of let them choose, right? You got to let them know, and you have to say no because they're going to want to try everything. Mm-hmm. Your job is to govern the fact that they can't do everything for you, not only for your sanity, but for your kids' health. And you make an interesting point about whatever skills are passed along from your father to you are retained. The fact that you at least passed along the skills to your kids to know what hard work looks like and dedication and focus. So use the skills you were given and applied them in an accelerated fashion. And then you married the right woman who happened to have a dad from MacGyver, right? So that always helps.
Yeah. I love going to him.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
When my wife and I got married, we bought a 100-year-old house in Green Bay, Wisconsin. No insulation, 1,100 square feet. It was ancient. And I told my wife, this is literally 2 months before we get married. I said, I'm going to fix this house up and we're going to move in after we get married. And her parents came up and her dad was not handy and looked at the house and was there while I was starting the first projects. And he looked at, my dad happened to come up, who is a master carpenter, electrician, all those things. It's where I learned mechanic, all that stuff. And he looked at my wife, my father, looked at her and said, does he have any idea what he's doing? This scares me. And she didn't know. She's like, I hope so.
So good.
Yeah, it is. Let's wrap up this. You've got keynote speaking, sales leadership, the Dad podcast. I'm going to give you some straight on feedback. I've had a lot of people on the show who have pivoted what I call into leadership coaching, fatherhood coaching, speaking. I've yet to come across anyone with the humility you have, Casey. You're not doing this because you think everyone needs to hear what you have to say. I think you're doing this sharing, as you mentioned, a lot of the film room sessions you've had in life and how other people can maybe benefit from those. And I love the fact that I could come to you as a salesperson or as a leader, but also as a father, and really walk away with some lessons I can apply in all aspects of my life. Where do you find the greatest joy now in all of your pursuits?
All the above. I think what the reason why this is working for me, one, I knew when I wrote a book, I didn't want to write a book that's, let me tell you how great I am. More, my book was, let me tell you where I struggled. And let me tell you what the things I still have to work hard to become my best version of me. I started a podcast because I thought it'd be kind of cool to do some dad stuff and get free therapy out of every episode.
Bingo.
Yeah. And then coaching and speaking found me. I didn't plan on doing this. This just found me.
Interesting.
And I just read a book called The Second Mountain that one of my clients had me read. And it speaks to me. It's a little, I'm not like a super religious guy, but I'm definitely spiritual. I feel like I meet people for a reason. And
Yeah.
it's the second mountain as I'm climbing my second mountain right now. I have a greater purpose every time I speak, whether it's a keynote or like when I get into coaching. I feel like it's this impact you get to have on people. And coaching to me is not about telling people the answer. Coaching to me is about asking great questions, and people end up coaching themselves.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I never thought, and allows me to kind of be hands-on with my kids still. And I got one going off to college. I got a sophomore. I get to pick and choose when I get to do things now. But it's spent 20 years in a corporate grind. I earned it. And
I think a lot of people do that corporate grind and then they retire and then they wither away because they don't ever go to the second mountain. So I have a friend who started a financial management firm, and he called it, his tagline is "From Success to Significance." You've been successful. Now, how significant can you be in other people's lives? And there are a few people who have the gift of multiplying your impact, like you do through your podcast and your book and through your coaching and speaking. And yet the fact that you also noted that those one-on-one moments are just as fulfilling, right? And your kids are witnessing it. You said they may not process it yet, but when they're older, they're going to go, wow, I had no idea how much mom and dad's actions influenced my own behavior, my beliefs, until I started to face the same decisions they've been facing.
Yeah, you made me think of two quick things before we wrap. So this week was a proud moment. Like my kids got home. My son did a few things, went right to the golf course. My daughter got home. All of a sudden, she comes down the stairs. I'm doing something. I can see her like the stairs, and she's got workout gear on. She goes and lifts. She goes and runs, and then she goes and shoots. Wasn't my idea.
Awesome.
So it's seeing the hard work, like where it's their idea, not mine. And then this morning usually I get to say goodbye to the kids when they go to school because I'm usually up earlier than my wife. And I said, hey guys, dad can't, usually I pick the dog up and the dog waves. It's like their thing. I go, I can't, dad starts his call at 7. I wanted to be able to like say really goodbye real quick though. And it was like 7:01. I was getting coffee but I texted the client. I was saying, hey, I'm going to be 1 minute late. My apologies. I let him know. But my daughter didn't know I did that. And so I walk into my Riley's, Dad, you're late. It's 7:01. What are you doing? Called me out. I'm like, honey, I love it.
Yeah.
You want to be on time? I set expectations. They know I'm going to be 1 minute late.
Yep.
But I love the fact that you called me out on that.
Yeah.
So to me, I was like, what a great. So somewhere she knows the power of time, power of being on time.
Absolutely.
That was like, it was kind of a cool moment this morning. I got grounded by my daughter.
For me, I firmly believe that when you're a parent, you're a parent. And if you do that right, you will earn the right to be their friend when they're older. You can't be their friend when you're their parent. Then that doesn't work. So I feel very blessed that all my kids are older and we love to hang out with each other. At least they were here. Maybe they were rolling their eyes behind me. But we truly enjoy being around our kids. And their results kind of speak for themselves. They all kind of made the teams they wanted to make and worked hard. And that wasn't my opinion or my decisions or anything else. So objectively, they've shown me that they've put the work in. And hopefully those lessons in life, as you said, you got to let them find their lane, will make an impact. And this is probably one of the best episodes I've done in a year, Casey.
Wow.
Really enjoyed it. Really great.
Super fun.
Great exchange. And I think you've got so much depth to what you're doing. And I do think it comes from a place of servitude and humility that I don't see very often. And I wish you the best. And I'll be following your content for a long time.
I appreciate it, man. My quarterback coach in college, shout out to Bo Baldwin. He said, Case, if you have to tell me how good you are, you're not that good. When you're great, I'll tell you.
Right.
And I just never wanted to be, I don't know. I hate arrogance. It drives me nuts. I hate ego.
Mm-hmm.
We all have one, but it's like, I work hard to check mine often. And to me now, I like being around people and shout out to my wife. My wife keeps me humble
Yeah, mine does
Actually,
as well.
one last story.
Yeah, please.
So I was at the LinkedIn Executive Conference in 2016, and I was lucky enough to be in a room. There's 16 of us executives, and we got to meet Jeff Weiner, the CEO at the time.
Yep.
And a couple of VPs. And when Jeff walked in, it was almost like, everybody, the Royal Highness. It was like,
sure.
and no offense to him, but I was like, he's just a dude. He's just like us. Sorry, guys. That's not. And everyone was scared, you know what, to ask questions. And I was like, I'll go first. And one of the concerns I had was when like we had Dynamics and we had LinkedIn, and we had two Salesforce selling to us. And so I said, I'm curious from a customer's perspective, when should we expect you to align your sales process and sales strategy so we don't have to deal with two Salesforces? I got this blank stare. I was like, uh-oh, I think I just pissed him off. And he's like, great question, Casey. And it says something. He gives me an answer. And then a couple people ask questions. And then one other person, then I asked him another question later that I gave him a question that kind of was now a feature in Sales Navigator, which is kind of cool that I see. And then I had to leave because my wife was getting surgery. So I had to like sneak out of the room early. And right before I hit the door, he goes, Casey. And I turn around, he goes, hey, really good question today. Thanks for your interaction. I was like, oh my God, that was awesome. I get out in the hall. I'm like, oh my God, that was so cool. And so I call my wife. I'm like, hey, you're never going to believe what happened. I had this interaction with this executive, and he's like the big deal LinkedIn. I asked this question. He said, you did a good job for everybody. She's like, who? He's not like he's Russell Crowe. Like, who? Yeah. What time are you going to be home?
Yeah. Somehow they just bring it right down. Oh, yeah.
And not like she's mad. She's just like, hey, cool, but let's make sure you're on time because I got surgery in the morning.
I have similar experiences with my wife where she can tell when I'm generally excited about something, but she's almost, oh, that's cute, honey. Right. And I don't know, maybe you've had more experience with Jeff, but when Jeff was running LinkedIn, my perception of his persona and the way he led that company was pretty solid.
Yeah. It was fun to be around, but it's funny the people around him though made it feel like it was just, I don't know, to each his own and positive, but like in the end, we're all like, what's his name? That Saturday Night Live skit. I make gold records, baby. I put my pants one leg at a time.
More cowbell. I had a similar experience at GE. We would have meetings to decide where people were going to sit in the meeting if Jack Welch or Keith Sharon, the CFO, showed up. Like literally, we'd have meetings for hours to debate who would sit next to Jack or Keith, and then everywhere all the way down. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And it really brought it home to me where when the meeting happened, I go to the bathroom and I'm standing in the urinal, and next to me, Keith Sharon, the CFO, walks in. He's like, hey, how you doing, Pete? I'm like, that's how casual this should be. They didn't care. By the way, neither one of them cared. They did not care who sat next to him.
This is so bad. This is like my authenticity. And this is that the filter should slow this thing down, but it's going to come out anyways. You can edit this out. My son's favorite bathroom joke.
Yeah.
I looked at God, this water's freezing, bud.
I get it. I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving it in. By the way, that's the best cold close I've had of any podcast either, by the way. Casey, it has been great. Rarely do we wrap up an hour podcast with something as good as that, but I'm going to leave it in. And
that's what she said.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody follow this guy. If you're a dad out there trying to figure out a way to maybe get some time in the film room, reach out to Casey. He's going to be happy to help you recognize what you didn't do well and what you did do well, and always make you better every day. So thanks again, bud.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out Eating Crow. Like and subscribe so you never miss a video.